The wild boar charged through the pine undergrowth with murder in its black eyes, 300 pounds of tusked fury heading straight for the woman who had knelt beside the mountain stream to refill her canteen. And Atticus Nolan had perhaps 2 seconds to raise his rifle, aim, and fire before those curved tusks ripped through her calico dress and into the soft flesh beneath. The shot cracked through the Colorado mountain air like thunder, and the boar dropped mid-stride, sliding to a halt exactly 3 steps from where the woman still knelt, her hand frozen on the canteen, water spilling over her fingers. Most women would have screamed, fainted, or at the very least stumbled backward in terror. This one simply looked up at him with eyes the color of creekstone and said, "Thank you." Atticus lowered his rifle slowly, his heart still hammering against his ribs like it was trying to escape. The woman rose to her feet in one fluid motion, brushing pine needles from her skirt, and he found himself staring at her with an intensity that bordered on rudeness. She was beautiful in an unconventional way, all sharp angles and determined jaw, with dark hair pulled back in a practical braid that had come half undone during her journey through the mountains. But it was her composure that struck him most. She looked at the dead boar, then back at him, and there was no hysteria in her expression, only a calm assessment of what had almost happened and a genuine gratitude for what had not. "That was close," she said, and her voice carried a hint of humor that seemed entirely inappropriate for someone who had just narrowly escaped being gored to death. "Too close," Atticus replied, moving down from the rocky outcropping where he had been tracking elk. His boots found purchase on the loose shale with the easy confidence of a man who had spent most of his 26 years in these mountains. He was tall, over 6 feet, with shoulders broad enough to carry a deer carcass 5 miles without rest, and arms thick with the kind of muscle that came from splitting wood, hauling traps, and surviving winters that would have killed softer men. His hair hung past his shoulders, dark brown and tied back with a leather cord, and his face bore the weathered tan of someone who lived under the open sky more often than under a roof. "What are you doing out here alone?" "I am not alone now," she pointed out, and there was that hint of humor again, a sparkle in her gray eyes that made his stomach do something strange and unfamiliar. "You know what I mean. These mountains are not safe for a woman traveling by herself. That boar could have killed you, but it did not, thanks to you." She extended her hand in a gesture that seemed more suited to a city parlor than a mountainside clearing. "Luna Anders." He took her hand, noting the calluses on her palm, the strength in her grip. "Atticus Nolan. Most people call me Atticus. Some call me Nolan. Either works. I will call you Atticus then. The man who saved my life deserves to be called by his given name." She glanced at the boar again. "That is good meat going to waste unless you plan to dress it. You are not squeamish about such things, should I be? I grew up on a farm in Missouri. I have dressed more chickens, pigs, and cattle than I care to count." She retrieved her canteen, which had rolled a few feet away, and capped it efficiently. "Though I admit a wild boar is outside my experience." Atticus found himself fighting a smile. "Where are you headed, Miss Anders?" "Georgetown. I have a teaching position waiting for me there, assuming I arrive before they decide I am not coming and give the job to someone else." Georgetown was a mining town nestled in the valley below, about 6 miles as the crow flew, but closer to 8 following the mountain trails. It was July of 1878, and the town had grown considerably in recent years as silver strikes brought fortune seekers from across the country. Atticus made the journey down perhaps once a month to trade pelts and meat for supplies, but he much preferred the solitude of his cabin higher in the mountains. "You are a long way from the main trail," he observed. Luna had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I may have taken a wrong turn several hours ago. The map I was given was less detailed than I would have liked several hours ago." "You have been wandering lost in these mountains for hours?" Atticus felt his jaw tighten. The woman was lucky a boar was all she had encountered. There were mountain lions in these parts, not to mention bears, rattlesnakes, and cliffs hidden by undergrowth that could send a person tumbling to their death. "I was not panicking about it," Luna said, lifting her chin in a way that suggested she did not appreciate being scolded. "I knew if I kept following the water downward, I would eventually reach civilization." "That is actually not terrible logic," Atticus admitted. "But you would have ended up miles south of Georgetown, probably near Silver Plume, and you would have walked right through prime bear territory to get there. Then I am doubly fortunate you came along." She looked at him expectantly. "I do not suppose you would be willing to point me in the right direction." Atticus looked at the sky, gauging the position of the sun through the pine canopy. It was past noon, but not yet mid-afternoon. "I will do better than that. I will take you there myself. But we need to move soon if we want to make it before dark. The trail is not safe to travel after sunset. I would not want to take you away from your hunting. The elk will still be here tomorrow. You might not be if you wander off in the wrong direction again." He moved to the boar and crouched beside it, pulling his hunting knife from its sheath. Give me 10 minutes to dress this. No point wasting good meat like you said. Luna did not turn away as he worked, which surprised him. Most women of his acquaintance would have found an excuse to study the landscape or pick wildflowers rather than watch a man gut an animal. But Luna stood there with her arms crossed, watching with what appeared to be genuine interest as he made the necessary cuts with practiced efficiency. You are very skilled at that, she observed. I have had a lot of practice. This is how I make my living. Hunting and trapping in these mountains. A mountain man, she said, and there was something in her tone that was not quite approval, but not quite disapproval either. I read about men like you in the newspapers back east. They made it sound very romantic, living wild and free in the wilderness. Atticus snorted. Newspapers do not mention the frostbite, the loneliness, or the fact that you start talking to yourself after a few months without human company. He finished his work and wrapped the best cuts of meat in oilcloth from his pack. But it suits me well enough. Better than town life? Much better. Towns are too crowded, too loud, too full of people trying to tell you how to live. He stood, wiping his knife clean before sheathing it. No offense intended, seeing as you are about to become one of those town people, taken. Though I think you might be surprised by how much I agree with you. Luna adjusted the strap of her own pack, which looked heavy enough to make Atticus wince. I am not entirely thrilled about living in Georgetown, but a teaching position is a teaching position, and those are not easy for unmarried women to come by. Let me carry that, Atticus said, nodding toward her pack. I can manage, I know you can. But I can carry it easier, and we will make better time. He did not wait for her to argue, simply took the pack from her shoulders and added it to his own load. It was heavy, full of books from the feel of it, but he had carried heavier loads through worse terrain. Stay close and watch where you step. The trail can be treacherous if you are not familiar with it. They set off through the pine forest, following a path that was barely visible to the untrained eye but clear as a road to Atticus. Luna kept pace behind him without complaint, her breathing steady even as they climbed over fallen logs and navigated around boulder fields. She was stronger than she looked and more sure-footed than most townsfolk who attempted these trails. How long have you lived in these mountains? She asked after they had been walking for perhaps half an hour. 8 years, give or take. Came out here after the war. You fought? For the Union, yes. Joined up when I was 17, spent 3 years wishing I had not. He did not elaborate, and something in his tone must have conveyed that he did not want to discuss it further, because Luna let the subject drop. And you prefer this life to whatever you left behind? I left behind a father who drank himself to death and a brother who was halfway down the same path. So yes, I prefer this life considerably. He glanced back at her. What about you? What brings a Missouri farm girl all the way to the Colorado mountains to teach? The desire to do something with my life beyond marrying the first man who asks and producing a house full of children before I turn 30. Luna's voice carried a sharpness that suggested this was a sore subject. My family did not understand. They thought teaching was a foolish ambition for a woman, that I should be focused on finding a husband instead. So I left. Just like that? Just like that. I answered an advertisement in a newspaper, corresponded with the school board in Georgetown, and when they offered me the position, I packed my belongings and bought a train ticket west. She paused. My mother cried for 3 days. My father has not written to me since I left. That must have been hard. It was. But staying would have been harder. Luna's voice softened slightly. I do not expect you to understand. Men have always had the freedom to choose their own paths. Women have to fight for that same freedom, and even then we are judged harshly for wanting it. Atticus considered this as they walked. He had never thought much about such things, probably because he had never needed to. You are right, he said finally. I do not fully understand, but I respect it. Takes courage to walk away from everything you know. Says the man who has been living alone in the mountains for 8 years, touché. He found himself smiling despite himself. There was something refreshing about Luna's directness. Her refusal to play the helpless female despite having just nearly been killed by a wild boar. Most women he had encountered in Georgetown treated him like he was half savage, crossing to the other side of the street when they saw him coming, clutching their skirts and whispering to each other about the wild mountain man with his long hair and buckskin clothing. They continued down the mountain, the terrain gradually becoming less steep as they descended. Atticus pointed out various landmarks along the way. A lightning-struck pine that marked the turnoff to his cabin, a rock formation that looked like a sleeping bear, a meadow where elk liked to graze in the early morning hours. Luna listened attentively, asking intelligent questions that suggested she was committing the information to memory in case she ever needed it again. Do you think I will like Georgetown? She asked as they stopped beside a small stream to refill their canteens. Atticus considered the question carefully. That depends on what you are looking for. It is a rough town, full of miners and fortune seekers. There is not much in the way of culture or refinement, though I understand they have built a proper schoolhouse in the last year. The people are hardworking for the most part, but there is also gambling, drinking, and fighting. It is not an easy place, especially for a woman on her own. But there is also opportunity there. The town is growing fast and they need teachers, doctors, merchants. All the things that make a rough mining camp into a real community. If you can handle the roughness, you might find it suits you. Luna nodded slowly, digesting this information. I can handle rough. I grew up on a farm, remember? I have seen my share of hard living. A farm is different from a mining town, perhaps, but I am adaptable. She met his eyes with that direct gaze of hers. And I am not afraid of hard work or difficult people. I am just afraid of being ordinary, of living a small, safe life that does not matter to anyone, including myself. Atticus felt something shift in his chest, a recognition of a kindred spirit. He had never been able to articulate why he preferred the mountains to town, but Luna had just come close to capturing it. The desire to live a life that mattered, that meant something, even if only to yourself. You will do fine in Georgetown, he said quietly. Better than fine, probably. They reached the outskirts of Georgetown just as the sun was beginning to set, painting the mountain peaks in shades of gold and purple. The town sprawled along Clear Creek, a collection of rough wooden buildings, tents, and a few more substantial structures built from stone or brick. Smoke rose from dozens of chimneys, and the sound of voices, wagons, and hammering drifted up to meet them. After the quiet of the mountains, it seemed almost overwhelmingly loud. Luna stopped at the edge of town, looking down at it with an expression that was hard to read. Nervousness, perhaps, mixed with determination and maybe a hint of doubt. Having second thoughts? Atticus asked. No, just gathering my courage. She turned to him with a smile. Thank you for bringing me here safely. I am quite certain I would still be wandering around lost in the mountains if not for you. You would have figured it out eventually. You are resourceful. He handed her pack back to her, feeling strangely reluctant to see her go. They had only known each other for a few hours, but there was something about Luna Anders that intrigued him in a way no woman ever had before. Where are you supposed to report once you arrive? The schoolhouse, if I can find it, or the boarding house run by a Mrs. Fletcher. I have a room arranged there. I know where both are. Come on, I will show you. Atticus led her down the main street, very aware of the curious looks they attracted. He rarely came to town, and when he did, he certainly never arrived in the company of a respectable-looking young woman. He could practically hear the gossip starting already, whispers following them down the dusty street. The schoolhouse was a simple frame building near the church, painted white and looking almost startlingly clean compared to the rough structures around it. A man was sweeping the front steps, middle-aged and scholarly-looking with wire-rimmed spectacles and thinning hair. He looked up as they approached, his expression shifting from curiosity to relief. Miss Anders? He asked hopefully. Yes, I am Luna Anders. I apologize for arriving so late. I had some difficulty with the trail. We had begun to worry that you had changed your mind. The man set his broom aside and came down the steps to greet them properly. I am Harold Jameson, head of the school board. Welcome to Georgetown. Thank you, Mr. Jameson. I am very glad to be here. Luna glanced at Atticus. I would not have made it at all if not for Mr. Nolan. He found me lost in the mountains and was kind enough to guide me here. Jameson looked at Atticus with new interest, though there was also a hint of disapproval in his expression. Nolan, the mountain man, I have heard of you. Nothing good, I imagine, Atticus said dryly. On the contrary, Samuel Winters at the general store speaks highly of you. Says you are honest in your dealings and bring him the finest game meat he has ever sold. Jameson turned back to Luna. Though I must say, Miss Anders, you were taking quite a risk traveling these mountains alone. We expected you to arrive on the stage from Denver. I was on the stage, but it broke an axle about 10 miles north of here. The driver said it would be several hours before he could fix it, and I was impatient to arrive, so I decided to walk. I thought the trail would be straightforward. Luna smiled ruefully. I was mistaken. Well, you are here now, and that is what matters. Let me take you to Mrs. Fletcher's boarding house. I am sure you are exhausted and hungry. Jameson reached for her pack, but Luna had already shouldered it. I can manage, thank you. Mr. Nolan carried it most of the way here. I should be able to handle it the rest of the distance. Atticus found himself not wanting to leave, which was unusual for him. Normally, he was eager to conclude his business in town and return to the peaceful solitude of his cabin. But the thought of walking away from Luna Anders and never seeing her again sat heavy in his chest. I should be going, he said, making no move to actually go. Will you be in town long? Luna asked, and was there a note of hope in her voice, or was he imagining it? I was planning to head back tonight, but it is getting late. I might stay at the saloon, leave in the morning. He hesitated. The town is having a dance next Saturday night, or so I heard last time I was here. If you are not too busy settling in, perhaps you might save me a dance? Luna's smile lit up her entire face. I would like that very much. Jameson looked between them with poorly concealed disapproval, but he said nothing as Atticus tipped his hat to Luna and turned to walk away. He could feel her eyes on his back as he headed toward the general store, and he had to fight the urge to look back at her. Samuel Winters was just closing up the store when Atticus arrived, but he opened the door again with a welcoming smile. "Atticus, good to see you. I was hoping you would come by soon. I am running low on venison, and my customers have been asking for it. I have some good boar meat if you are interested. Wild pig, freshly dressed today." Atticus pulled the wrapped meat from his pack. Winters examined it approvingly. "This is excellent quality. I will take all you have got, the usual rate." They concluded their business quickly, and Atticus used some of his earnings to purchase coffee, flour, salt, and ammunition. He also bought a new shirt, though he could not have explained exactly why. His current shirts were still serviceable, but he found himself thinking about the dance next Saturday and wondering if Luna would think he looked foolish in his buckskins and old, worn cotton. The saloon was crowded that evening, full of miners fresh from the claims and eager to spend their hard-earned silver on whiskey and cards. Atticus found a quiet corner table and nursed a single beer, listening to the conversations around him without really participating. He learned that the Big Star mine had hit a promising new vein, that Jake Morrison had broken his leg in a cave-in but would probably recover, and that the new schoolteacher had arrived in town, brought in by none other than that wild mountain man who lived up in the high country. "I saw them walking down Main Street together," one man was saying, his voice slightly slurred from drink. "Pretty little thing she was. Wonder what she was doing alone with a man like that. I heard she got lost in the mountains and he found her," another man replied. "Probably saved her life, knowing what is up there. Still, it is not proper for an unmarried woman to be alone with a man that way. What kind of schoolteacher is she going to be if she does not have any sense of propriety?" Atticus felt his jaw tighten, but he forced himself to remain seated and silent. Getting into a fight on Luna's first night in town would not help her reputation any. But it bothered him that people were already gossiping about her, making assumptions and judgments based on nothing but their own small-minded prejudices. He left the saloon before he did something stupid and rented a room at the boarding house at the edge of town, not the same one where Luna was staying. Sleep did not come easily. He kept seeing her face the way she had looked at the dead boar and then at him, calm and grateful and entirely unafraid. Most people looked at Atticus like he was something dangerous, something barely civilized. But Luna had looked at him like he was simply a man who had done her a kindness, no more and no less. He left Georgetown before dawn, hiking back up into the mountains as the sun painted the sky pink and gold. His cabin was exactly as he had left it, a single-room structure built from logs he had cut and hauled himself, with a stone fireplace, a narrow bed, a table, and not much else. It was not fancy, but it was his, and it had been all he needed for 8 years. But as he went through the familiar routines of his day, checking his trap lines, hunting, gathering firewood, he found his thoughts continually drifting back to Luna Anders. He wondered how her first day of teaching had gone, whether the children had liked her, whether she was settling in well at the boarding house. He wondered if she was thinking about him at all, or if he had already faded from her memory, just another helpful stranger on the long journey from Missouri to Colorado. Saturday seemed to take forever to arrive. Atticus found himself grooming his horse with extra care, trimming his hair and beard, putting on the new shirt he had bought. He felt ridiculous, like a schoolboy preparing for his first dance, but he could not seem to help himself. The thought of seeing Luna again made his heart beat faster in a way that had nothing to do with physical exertion and everything to do with anticipation. The dance was held in the church hall, a large open room lit by dozens of lanterns and decorated with wildflowers. Nearly the entire town had turned out dressed in their Saturday best, which ranged from genuinely fine clothing brought from back east to rough miners' garb scrubbed as clean as possible. A small band of musicians was setting up in one corner, tuning a fiddle, a guitar, and an accordion. Luna arrived shortly after Atticus, and his breath caught in his throat at the sight of her. She wore a simple green dress that brought out the color of her eyes, and her hair was pinned up in an elaborate style that revealed the graceful curve of her neck. She looked beautiful, and Atticus was suddenly very aware that every unmarried man in Georgetown was probably thinking the same thing. She spotted him almost immediately, her face breaking into a smile that made him feel like he was the only person in the room. She crossed to him, ignoring the curious stares that followed her progress. "You came," she said, sounding genuinely pleased. "I said I would." Atticus shifted his weight, feeling awkward and out of place among all these town people. "How was your first week of teaching?" "Challenging but good. The children are bright, though some of them have had very little formal education. I have my work cut out for me, but I am enjoying it." Her eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "I taught them about geography yesterday, showed them on a map where we are in relation to the rest of the country. Several of them had never seen a map before. Can you imagine? I never saw a map until I joined the army, Atticus admitted. So yes, I can imagine. The musicians began to play, and couples started moving onto the dance floor. Atticus offered Luna his hand, praying silently that he would not step on her feet or otherwise embarrass himself. He had learned to dance years ago, before the war, but he was badly out of practice. Luna took his hand without hesitation, allowing him to lead her into a simple waltz. She was a good dancer, light on her feet and easy to lead, and after a few moments Atticus felt himself relaxing into the rhythm of the music. They did not speak much as they danced, but somehow words did not seem necessary. There was a connection between them, an understanding that went beyond mere conversation. When the song ended, Atticus reluctantly released her, but Luna did not move away. "Would you like to get some air?" she asked. "It is getting rather warm in here." They stepped outside into the cool evening air, walking a short distance from the church hall to where they could still hear the music but have some privacy. The stars were brilliant overhead, undimmed by city lights, and a half moon hung low on the horizon. "I have been thinking about you this week," Luna said quietly. "Wondering how you were, what you were doing up there in your mountain cabin." "I have been thinking about you too," Atticus admitted. "Wondering if you were settling in well, if the townspeople were treating you kindly. Mostly they have been, though there has been some gossip about my arrival in town with you. Apparently it was not entirely proper." Luna's tone was wry rather than upset. "Fletcher felt it necessary to lecture me about the importance of maintaining my reputation as the schoolteacher. I am sorry, I did not mean to cause trouble for you." "You did not cause anything. People who want to gossip will find something to gossip about regardless of what we do or do not do." She looked up at him, her face serious in the moonlight. "But I want you to know that I do not regret it. I am grateful you found me when you did, and I am grateful for the time we spent together on the trail. That day meant something to me." "It meant something to me too," Atticus said, and then, because he had never been good at pretty words or subtle courtship, he added bluntly, "I would like to see you again, Luna. Not just at town dances, but regularly. I know I am not the kind of man most women want, living up in the mountains the way I do, but I would like a chance to court you properly if you will have me." Luna was quiet for a long moment, and Atticus felt his heart sink. He had overstepped, moved too fast, assumed too much based on a few smiles and one dance, but then she said, "I would like that very much. Though I should warn you that I am not the kind of woman most men want either. I have opinions and I speak them freely. I value my independence, and I have no intention of giving up teaching just because I might be courting someone. If those things are going to be problems for you, you should tell me now." "Those are the things I like most about you," Atticus said honestly. "You are not like anyone I have ever met before, and I mean that in the best possible way." "Then yes, Atticus Nolan, you may court me." Luna smiled up at him, and in that moment Atticus thought she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. More beautiful than mountain sunrises or winter snowfields, or any of the other wonders he had encountered in his 8 years in the wilderness. They returned to the dance, and Atticus claimed another 2 dances with Luna before reluctantly stepping back to give other men a chance. He watched from the sidelines as she danced with the mayor, with Harold Jameson, with several young miners who held her rather too close for his liking. But she always found him again between dances, coming to stand beside him, and that simple act seemed to declare to the entire town that Atticus Nolan had a claim on the new schoolteacher's affections. The courtship that followed was unlike any traditional courtship Georgetown had ever seen. Atticus came down from the mountains every Sunday, attending church with Luna and then taking her on long walks along the creek or up into the lower foothills where the trails were safe and well marked. They talked for hours, discovering shared interests and complementary differences. Luna told him about growing up on the farm, about her dreams of seeing more of the world, about the books she loved and the ideas that excited her. Atticus told her about his time in the war, the things he had seen and done that still haunted him sometimes, about how the mountains had saved him when he thought he could not be saved. "I was angry when I came here," he admitted to her one Sunday afternoon as they sat beside a waterfall, their shoes off and feet dangling in the cold water. "Angry at the war, at death, at a world that seemed determined to destroy everything good. I thought if I came far enough into the wilderness I could escape all of that, and for a while I did." "But," Luna prompted gently, "but loneliness is its own kind of death. I have been surviving up here, but I have not really been living. Not until I met you." He looked at her, this remarkable woman who had walked into his life by accident and changed everything. "You make me want to live again, Luna. Really live, not just exist from one day to the next." "You make me want things I thought I had given up on," Luna said softly. "When I left Missouri, I told myself I was choosing teaching over marriage, career over family. I thought those were my only options, but with you, I am starting to think maybe I do not have to choose. Maybe I can have both if I find the right person." "Am I the right person?" Atticus asked, his heart in his throat. I am starting to think you might be. They kissed for the first time that day, a sweet, tentative kiss that quickly deepened into something more passionate. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Luna laughed breathlessly. We should probably get back to town before we do something that would really give Mrs. Fletcher something to lecture me about. Summer turned to autumn, and their courtship continued. Atticus found himself spending more and more time in Georgetown, helping Luna with repairs to the schoolhouse, attending town meetings, becoming part of the community in a way he never had before. He still returned to his cabin regularly, still hunted and trapped to earn his living, but the mountains felt different now. They were no longer a refuge from the world, but simply a place he worked, beautiful but no longer sufficient to fill all his needs. Luna continued teaching, earning the respect of the townspeople with her dedication and skill. The children adored her, and their parents appreciated the real education she was providing. She also started a small lending library out of her own collection of books, opening it to anyone in town who wanted to improve their reading skills. It was a small thing, but it made a real difference in a place where education and culture were scarce. In October, Atticus asked Luna to marry him. They were in the mountains again, at a spot he had taken her to several times, a high meadow that offered views of the entire valley below. The aspen trees were golden, and the air was crisp with the promise of coming winter. I know I am not much of a catch, he began, and Luna immediately put her finger to his lips to silence him. If the next words out of your mouth are reasons why I should not want to marry you, I do not want to hear them, she said firmly. I know exactly who you are, Atticus Nolan. I know you live in a tiny cabin in the mountains. I know you have more skill with a rifle than with pretty words. I know you are more comfortable with silence than with society. And I love you anyway. In fact, I love you because of those things, not in spite of them. I love you too, Atticus said, his voice rough with emotion. I love your strength, your intelligence, your refusal to be anything other than exactly who you are. I love the way you look at the world like it is full of possibilities instead of limitations. I love that you did not scream when that boar nearly killed you, that you thanked me instead. You are the bravest person I have ever met, Luna Anders, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me? Yes, Luna said without hesitation. Yes, absolutely yes. He kissed her then, pulling her close and pouring 8 years of loneliness and longing into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, both of them were crying, tears of joy streaming down their faces. They were married in November in the same church where they had danced together for the first time. The entire town turned out for the wedding, which surprised Atticus but delighted Luna. She wore a simple white dress that she had sewn herself, with a crown of late-season wildflowers in her hair, and Atticus thought she looked like something out of a dream. He wore his new shirt and a board-suit jacket that was slightly too small in the shoulders but would have to do. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. When the preacher asked if anyone objected to the union, there was a long silence, and then Samuel Winters stood up and said loudly, "The only objection I have is that it took these two so long to figure out what the rest of us could see from the moment they walked into town together. They are meant for each other, and anyone with eyes can see it." Laughter rippled through the church, and even the preacher smiled as he pronounced them man and wife. The question of where they would live had been a source of some discussion. Atticus's cabin was too small and too remote for Luna to live there while still teaching in Georgetown. But Atticus could not imagine living full-time in town, surrounded by people and noise and the constant press of civilization. In the end, they found a compromise. They would rent a small house in Georgetown during the school year, and Atticus would continue his hunting and trapping, coming down from the mountains every few days. In the summer, when Luna was not teaching, they would live in his cabin, and he would teach her everything he knew about surviving and thriving in the wilderness. Their first winter together was an adjustment for both of them. Luna was used to living alone, managing her own time and space. Atticus was used to silence and solitude. They had to learn how to share a home, how to accommodate each other's habits and needs, how to argue constructively when they disagreed about something. But they worked at it, both of them committed to making their marriage succeed. There were moments of pure joy. Like the first morning Atticus woke up next to Luna and realized this was his life now, that he got to wake up next to this incredible woman every day for the rest of his life. There were moments of frustration, like when Luna decided to reorganize his hunting gear and he could not find anything for a week, or when Atticus tracked mud through the house after she had just cleaned and she threatened to make him sleep in the barn. But through it all there was love, deep and abiding and stronger than any momentary irritation. In January, a severe blizzard hit the mountains, the kind that could trap people in their homes for days or even weeks. Atticus had been up at his cabin checking his trap lines when the storm hit, and he was unable to return to Georgetown for 3 days. Luna was frantic with worry, imagining him frozen to death or buried in an avalanche. When he finally made it back to town, she threw her arms around him and burst into tears. "I thought I had lost you," she sobbed into his shoulder. "I thought you were dead, and I was going to have to live the rest of my life without you." "I am all right," Atticus soothed, holding her tight. "I have weathered worse storms than that. I know how to survive up there, Luna. You have to trust that. I do trust you. But that does not stop me from worrying." She pulled back to look at him, her eyes red from crying. "Promise me you will be more careful. Promise me you will not take unnecessary risks." "I promise," Atticus said, and he meant it. He had something to live for now, someone who depended on him and loved him, and he would not throw that away through carelessness or foolish pride. Spring came late that year, but when it finally arrived, it was glorious. The snow melted, revealing green meadows full of wildflowers. The creeks ran high and clear with runoff from the mountains. And Luna finished her first year of teaching with a small ceremony where her students presented her with gifts they had made themselves. Drawings, carved wooden animals, a carefully pressed wildflower arrangement. "You have made a real difference here," Harold Jameson told her after the ceremony. "The school board is very pleased with your work. We would like to offer you a contract for next year." "I would be happy to continue teaching," Luna said. "Georgetown feels like home now." That summer, as planned, they moved up to Atticus's cabin. Luna had been prepared for roughness, for a difficult adjustment to life without the conveniences of town. But she had not been prepared for how much she would love it. The silence of the mountains, broken only by wind and birdsong and the occasional call of an elk. The stunning beauty of sunrise over the peaks. The satisfaction of living simply, relying on skills and knowledge rather than purchased goods. Atticus taught her how to track animals, how to read weather signs, how to find edible plants and avoid poisonous ones. Luna proved to be a quick study, soaking up knowledge the way she always had, asking intelligent questions and practicing until she had mastered each new skill. By the end of the summer, she could shoot well enough to bring down a rabbit at 30 yards, could clean and cook any game they caught, could identify dozens of plants and their uses. "You are a natural at this," Atticus told her one evening as they sat outside the cabin, watching the stars come out. "You take to mountain life like you were born to it." "I love it up here," Luna admitted. "I love teaching, and I love our life in Georgetown. But there is something about this place that feels right, like this is where I am supposed to be." "What if we built a bigger cabin?" Atticus said slowly, an idea forming in his mind. "Big enough for a family. We could still spend the school year in town, but we would have a real home up here, not just a tiny one-room shack." "A family," Luna repeated, and there was something in her voice that made Atticus look at her more closely. "I was speaking hypothetically, but from your tone, I am guessing we might need to start thinking about it more concretely." Luna smiled, her hand drifting to her stomach in an unconscious gesture. "I think we might be having a baby, Atticus. I am not certain yet, but I am fairly sure." Joy flooded through Atticus, so intense it was almost painful. "A baby! We are going to have a baby! Are you happy about it? I know we did not plan this, that it is happening sooner than we might have wanted. Happy does not even begin to cover it." Atticus pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully as if she was made of something fragile. "I am terrified and thrilled and grateful all at once. We are going to be parents, Luna. We are going to have a child." They spent the rest of the summer making plans. Atticus started work on a larger cabin, choosing a site near his old one that had good water access and southern exposure for warmth in winter. It would take time to build, probably several seasons, but he was determined to give his family a proper home. Luna continued teaching when they returned to Georgetown in the fall, though she informed the school board that she would need to step back when the baby came. "I want to keep teaching eventually," she told Atticus. "Maybe when the child is older, or maybe part-time. But I also want to be there for our baby, to be a real mother." "We will figure it out," Atticus assured her. "Whatever you want, whatever works for our family, we will make it happen." Their daughter was born in March of 1880, a healthy baby girl with her mother's gray eyes and her father's dark hair. They named her Adelaide after Luna's grandmother, and she was the most beautiful thing either of them had ever seen. Atticus, who had survived war and wilderness and years of solitude, found himself reduced to tears at the sight of his tiny daughter wrapped in blankets, her small hand gripping his finger with surprising strength. "She is perfect," he whispered, awed. "She really is." Luna agreed, exhausted but happy. "We made her, Atticus. We made this perfect little person." Parenthood was both harder and more wonderful than either of them had imagined. Adelaide was a demanding baby, colicky and prone to crying at all hours of the night. But she was also alert and curious, her eyes tracking movement even when she was just weeks old, and when she smiled for the first time at 6 weeks old, both Atticus and Luna agreed it was worth every sleepless night. Luna took a year off from teaching to focus on their daughter, but she did not abandon education entirely. She started offering evening classes for adults who wanted to learn to read or improve their skills, holding sessions in their home twice a week. Atticus built her a bookshelf to hold her growing collection, and their small house became a gathering place for those hungry for knowledge in a town where formal education was still rare. The new cabin was finished by the summer of 1881, and they moved in with Adelaide just before her second birthday. It was twice the size of the old cabin, with 2 bedrooms, a proper kitchen, and a large main room with windows that looked out over the valley. Atticus had built it with his own hands, every log cut and placed with care, and Luna had sewn curtains and made furniture to turn it into a real home. "This is ours," Luna said, standing in the middle of the main room with Adelaide in her arms. "All of this beautiful place, this life, we built it together." "We did," Atticus agreed, coming to stand beside her, "and it is just the beginning. We have years ahead of us, Luna, years to watch Adelaide grow, to build our life, to be together." They fell into a comfortable rhythm over the following years. Winters and spring in Georgetown, where Luna taught and Adelaide played with the other children in town. Summers and fall in the mountain cabin where they lived simply and happily, teaching Adelaide to love the wilderness the way they did. Adelaide grew into a bright, adventurous child, equally at home with books and with the forest, comfortable in both worlds her parents had created for her. In 1883, Luna gave birth to their second child, a son they named Andrew. He was an easier baby than Adelaide had been, content and peaceful, and he seemed to come into the world already comfortable in his own skin. Atticus taught him to ride before he could barely walk, and by the time he was 3, Andrew could identify animal tracks and knew the names of dozens of plants. Life was good, better than either Luna or Atticus had ever dared to hope when they first met beside that mountain stream. They had built something real together, a family and a home that satisfied both Luna's need for purpose and intellectual engagement, and Atticus's need for connection to the wild places he loved. In 1885, when Adelaide was 5 and Andrew was 2, the town of Georgetown asked Luna to become the principal of the school. It was a significant promotion, and it came with a raise in salary and more responsibility. Luna was torn. She loved teaching and she was honored by the offer, but it would mean more time away from their mountain home, more demands on her energy and attention. "What do you think?" she asked Atticus as they sat on the porch of their mountain cabin, watching the children play in the meadow below. "I think you should do whatever makes you happy," Atticus said. "We have enough money from my hunting and your teaching. We do not need more. But if this is something you want, something that would fulfill you, then you should take it." "But what about our time up here? What about the summers in the mountains? The mountains are not going anywhere. We will figure out a way to make it work." Atticus took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "You gave up a lot to be with me, Luna. You could have married someone wealthy, someone who could have given you an easier life in a city somewhere. I do not want you to give up your dreams and ambitions because of me. You are part of my dreams and ambitions," Luna said firmly. "You and the children and this life we have built together, but you are right that I want this position. I think I can do good work as principal, help shape education in this town in meaningful ways. Then take it. We will make it work just like we always do." Luna accepted the position, and true to Atticus's word, they made it work. It was not always easy, juggling her responsibilities at the school with their family life and their time in the mountains. But they managed. Atticus took on more of the childcare during the school year, bringing Adelaide and Andrew with him on his trips to check trap lines when weather and circumstances allowed. Luna worked long hours during the week but jealously guarded her weekends for family time. The years passed quickly. Adelaide grew into a young woman who was as comfortable discussing philosophy as she was tracking deer through the forest. She had inherited her mother's love of learning and her father's skill in the wilderness, and she seemed destined for remarkable things. Andrew was quieter than his sister but no less capable, with a talent for art and an eye for the beauty of the natural world that he captured in drawings and paintings. In 1890, when Adelaide was 10 and Andrew was 7, Luna gave birth to their third and final child, another daughter they named Alice. She was the surprise they had not been expecting, coming along after Luna had assumed her childbearing years were behind her. But she was welcomed with joy, a late blessing that completed their family. By now, Georgetown had grown into a real town, with proper streets, electric lights, and even a small library that Luna had been instrumental in establishing. The mining boom had peaked and started to decline, but the town had diversified, attracting families and businesses that were not solely dependent on silver. The school had expanded to accommodate the growing population, and under Luna's leadership, it had become one of the best-regarded schools in Colorado. Atticus, now in his late 30s, had become something of a local legend. The mountain man who had married the schoolteacher was a story people loved to tell, and Atticus found himself sought after for his knowledge of the mountains and wilderness. He led hunting expeditions for wealthy visitors from Denver, taught wilderness skills to scouts and outdoors enthusiasts, and wrote occasional articles for outdoor magazines about life in the Colorado high country, but his favorite role was still father and husband. He loved coming home after a few days in the mountains to find his family waiting for him. He loved reading to Alice at bedtime, discussing philosophy with Adelaide, looking at Andrew's latest paintings. And he loved the quiet evenings with Luna, when the children were asleep and they could sit together and talk about everything and nothing, as comfortable with each other as they had been since the beginning. "Do you ever regret it?" Luna asked him one evening in the summer of 1895, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset. Alice was 8 now, Adelaide 15, and Andrew 12. The years had been kind to both of them, though Atticus's hair was starting to show gray at the temples and Luna had laugh lines around her eyes that had not been there when they met. "Regret what?" Atticus asked. "Any of it. Marrying me, giving up your solitary life in the mountains, becoming part of the town." Atticus considered the question seriously because Luna deserved a thoughtful answer. "I would not say I gave up my life in the mountains. I would say I expanded it to include other things, other people. And no, I do not regret any of it. My life before I met you was half a life, Luna. I was surviving, but I was not truly living. You taught me how to live again, how to open my heart to other people, how to be part of a family and a community. I am a better man because of you. You would have been a good man regardless," Luna said softly, "but I am glad we found each other. I am glad that Boar charged at me that day, as terrifying as it was, because it brought you into my life. I am glad I was there to shoot it," Atticus agreed. "Though I still remember how you did not scream. Most women would have screamed. I was too surprised to scream. And then you had killed it, and screaming seemed unnecessary." Luna smiled at the memory. "I knew right then that you were someone special, someone who would risk his own safety to protect a stranger. That meant something to me. You meant something to me from the moment I met you," Atticus said. "I just did not fully understand it yet." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and pink. In the distance, they could hear the children laughing as they played some game that involved a lot of running and shouting. It was a perfect moment, the kind that made all the struggles and sacrifices worthwhile. Adelaide left for college in Denver in 1896, the first of their children to leave home. It was hard for both Luna and Atticus, watching their eldest daughter head off into the world, but they were also proud. Adelaide planned to study education and literature, with dreams of becoming a teacher like her mother or perhaps a professor at a university. She had inherited Luna's determination and Atticus's courage, and they had no doubt she would succeed at whatever she chose to do. Andrew showed less interest in formal education but demonstrated remarkable talent as an artist. By the time he was 14, his paintings were good enough that a gallery owner in Denver expressed interest in showing his work. He spent hours in the mountains with his father, painting landscapes and wildlife with an accuracy and sensitivity that was almost uncanny. Atticus thought Andrew saw the wilderness the way he himself experienced it, understanding it not just intellectually but emotionally and spiritually. Alice, the youngest, was turning out to be a perfect blend of her siblings, bookish like Adelaide but artistic like Andrew, with a stubborn streak that reminded both parents of themselves at that age. She had already declared her intention to become a doctor, which was an ambitious goal for a woman in 1896 but not impossible. Luna was determined to support her daughter's dreams, just as Atticus had supported hers. The turn of the century brought changes to Georgetown and to their family. The mining industry was in decline, and some families were leaving for opportunities elsewhere. But the town persisted, evolving into a year-round community that catered to summer tourists who came to enjoy the mountain scenery and cooler temperatures. Luna retired from her position as principal in 1902 after nearly 2 decades of service to the school. She was 63 years old and ready to spend more time in the mountains and with her family. Atticus, now 50, was slowing down slightly but still strong and capable. His hair was more silver than brown, and he had developed a slight limp from an old injury, but he could still out-hike men half his age and bring down an elk at 200 yards. He had finally achieved something he had never thought possible: contentment. Complete, deep, abiding contentment with his life and his choices. Adelaide had graduated from college and was teaching at a school in Denver, engaged to a young lawyer she had met there. Andrew had opened his own studio in Georgetown, selling his paintings to tourists and locals alike while also working as a guide for visitors who wanted to explore the mountains. Alice was preparing to attend medical school, one of only a handful of women in her class, determined to become a physician despite all the obstacles society placed in her way. In the summer of 1905, the entire family gathered at the mountain cabin for Adelaide's wedding. She had insisted on being married there in the place where she had spent the happiest moments of her childhood, with the mountains as witness and her family around her. It was a small ceremony, just family and a few close friends, but it was perfect. Adelaide looked radiant in her simple white dress, and her fiancé, a quiet but clearly besotted young man named Thomas, looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "She is happy," Luna said to Atticus as they watched their daughter dance with her new husband. "We raised a daughter who knows her own mind, who chose a good man, who is going to have a wonderful life." "We did well," Atticus agreed. "All three of them have turned out better than I ever could have hoped. Better than I deserve. You deserve every good thing that has happened to you, Atticus Nolan," Luna said firmly. "You are a good man, a good father, and the best husband I could have asked for. Our children are wonderful because you helped raise them, because you showed them what it means to be strong and kind and honest." Atticus pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. They had been married for over 25 years, and he loved her more now than he had on their wedding day. Their love had deepened and matured, weathering challenges and growing stronger through shared experiences and mutual support. The years that followed were peaceful ones. Atticus and Luna spent most of their time at the mountain cabin now, with occasional trips down to Georgetown to see Andrew or to Denver to visit Adelaide and meet their first grandchild, a baby girl born in 1906. Alice completed medical school and opened a practice in Georgetown, becoming the first female doctor in the county and earning respect through her skill and dedication. In 1910, Atticus turned 58 and Luna turned 71. They were both feeling their age now, moving a bit slower, tiring a bit more easily. But they were still together, still in love, still finding joy in each day. They had built a life together that had exceeded all their expectations, that had been richer and fuller than either of them had dared to dream. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset as they had done thousands of times before, Luna said, "Tell me the story again, about the boar." Atticus smiled. It had become a family story, told and retold so many times that the children could recite it by heart. But he never tired of telling it, because it was their story, the beginning of everything. "I was tracking elk in the high country," he began, his voice taking on the rhythmic cadence of a well-worn tale. "And I heard this sound like thunder, but it was not thunder. It was a wild boar charging through the underbrush, heading straight for this woman who was kneeling by a stream. I barely had time to think, just raised my rifle and fired. The boar dropped 3 steps from her feet, and she looked up at me with these gray eyes, calm as could be, and said, 'Thank you.' No screaming, no fainting, just 'thank you.'" "And then?" Luna prompted, even though she knew what came next. "And then I fell in love with her, right then and there, though I did not realize it until later. I fell in love with the woman who did not scream, who thanked me instead, who walked into my life by accident and changed everything." "I love that story," Luna said softly. "I love that that is how we started." "Me too," Atticus said, taking her hand. "Best thing that ever happened to me, that boar charging out of the brush. Second best thing was you thanking me instead of running away." They sat together as the light faded and the stars came out, two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a life and a family together, who had loved each other through everything life had thrown at them. In the distance an elk bugled, its call echoing through the mountains. Somewhere in town their son was probably closing up his studio for the night. In Denver, their daughter was tucking their grandchildren into bed. And in Georgetown their youngest daughter was probably making her evening rounds at the hospital, checking on patients and earning their trust and respect. It was a good life, the best life, and it had all started with a wild boar, a rifle shot, and a woman who had not screamed but had thanked him instead. 10 years later, in 1920, Atticus Nolan passed away peacefully in his sleep at their mountain cabin, Luna beside him. He was 68 years old, and he had lived every one of those years to the fullest. His funeral was attended by half of Georgetown and people from all over Colorado who had known him, respected him, and loved him. His children spoke at the service, talking about what a wonderful father he had been, how he had taught them to love the wilderness, to value honesty and courage, to live with integrity and purpose. Luna lived another 5 years, spending her final years at the mountain cabin, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. She continued reading, continued learning, continued being the remarkable woman she had always been. When she passed away in 1925 at the age of 86, she was buried beside Atticus in the cemetery overlooking Georgetown, with the mountains they both loved rising up behind them. Their children kept the mountain cabin, and it became a gathering place for the growing family, a place where grandchildren and great-grandchildren learned the same lessons Atticus and Luna had taught their own children. The story of how they met, of the boar and the rifle shot and the woman who did not scream, was passed down through generations, becoming family legend and then family history, the foundation story of a family that had started with courage, gratitude, and love. Adelaide lived to be 92, a respected educator who influenced thousands of students over her long career. Andrew became a renowned landscape artist whose paintings of the Colorado mountains hung in galleries and homes across the country. Alice became one of the pioneering female physicians in Colorado, opening doors for women in medicine and saving countless lives through her skill and dedication. And all of them, when asked about their parents, would tell the same story. About a mountain man and a schoolteacher who met by accident in the wilderness. About a wild boar that charged and a rifle shot that saved a life. About a woman who did not scream but thanked him instead. About two people who found love when they were not looking for it, who built a life together that was richer and more meaningful than either could have imagined, who proved that sometimes the best things in life happen when you least expect them. The mountain cabin still stands today, carefully maintained by descendants who understand its importance, not just as a building but as a symbol of what Atticus and Luna created together. The land around it is protected, kept wild and beautiful the way they would have wanted. And on summer evenings, if you sit on that old porch and watch the sunset, you can almost see them there. Two people who loved each other and loved these mountains, whose story started with danger and gratitude and became something beautiful that lasted generations. Their love story was not perfect or easy. They faced challenges, made mistakes, had arguments and difficult times. But they faced everything together, with courage and humor and an abiding commitment to each other. They showed their children and grandchildren what real love looked like. Not the passionate romance of storybooks, but the steady, enduring love that grows deeper with time, that weathers storms and celebrates joys, that transforms two separate lives into one shared journey. And it all started with a single moment in the Colorado wilderness, with a charging boar and a perfectly aimed rifle shot. With a woman who had the courage to be calm in the face of danger and the grace to express gratitude to the stranger who saved her life. That moment changed two lives forever, bringing together two people who should never have met, who came from different worlds and different experiences, but who recognized something essential in each other that first day beside the mountain stream. Atticus saw in Luna a strength and independence that matched his own, a woman who was not afraid of the wilderness or of life's challenges, who could stand on her own but also knew how to accept help gracefully. Luna saw in Atticus a protector and a partner, a man who had been hardened by war and solitude but who still had capacity for gentleness and love, who could be both fierce and tender, both solitary and devoted. They spent 45 years together, and every one of those years was a gift. They raised 3 remarkable children who went on to have remarkable lives. They built 2 homes, one in town and one in the mountains, and made both of them places of warmth and welcome. They contributed to their community. Luna through education and Atticus through his knowledge of the wilderness and his willingness to share it. They created a legacy that extended far beyond their own lives, influencing generations of descendants and touching the lives of countless people who knew them or knew of them. But more than any of their accomplishments or contributions, what mattered most was the love they shared. It was a love built on respect and trust, on shared values and complementary strengths. It was a love that allowed both of them to be fully themselves while also being part of something larger. It was a love that grew and evolved over time, adapting to changes and challenges, deepening with every shared experience. And it was a love that proved what Atticus and Luna had both always believed, but had never quite articulated until they found each other. That the best things in life often come when you are not looking for them, that strength and tenderness are not opposing qualities but complementary ones, that it is possible to be independent and committed at the same time, to honor your own dreams while supporting someone else's. Their story became a touchstone for their descendants, a reminder of what marriage could be at its best, what love looked like when it was built on a solid foundation of mutual respect and genuine affection. When their great-grandchildren faced challenges in their own marriages, they would think of Atticus and Luna, of how they had worked through difficulties together, of how they had built something lasting and meaningful. When their great-great-grandchildren made choices about their own lives, they would remember the legacy of courage and independence, of choosing the life you want rather than the life others expect you to live. The mountains remain, as eternal and beautiful as they were when Atticus first came to them seeking peace after the war, as they were when Luna first saw them and felt her heart expand with wonder and possibility. The cabin remains, lovingly preserved, a testament to one man's skill and determination to provide for his family. The school in Georgetown continues to educate children, building on the foundation Luna established over 2 decades of dedicated service. And Andrew's paintings hang in museums and private collections, capturing the beauty of the Colorado wilderness for future generations who might never have the chance to experience it firsthand. But the most important legacy Atticus and Luna left behind was not something you could see or touch or hang on a wall. It was the example they set, the proof they provided that it is possible to live a life true to yourself while also being deeply connected to others. That love and independence are not mutually exclusive. That courage comes in many forms. From charging into battle to simply refusing to scream when danger threatens. From leaving everything familiar to build a new life to opening your heart to love when you had convinced yourself you did not need it. Their story reminds us that sometimes the most significant moments in our lives come without warning, that we should be prepared to recognize them and seize them when they appear. That boar charging out of the underbrush could have been just another day in the mountains for Atticus, another routine hunt that ended with meat for the winter and nothing more. For Luna, getting lost in the mountains could have been a disaster, the end of her journey before it really began. Instead, it was the beginning of everything, the moment when two people found each other and discovered that together they could build something neither could have created alone. And so the story endures, passed down through generations, told and retold, polished smooth by repetition but never losing its essential truth. The mountain man killed the charging boar 3 steps from her feet. She did not scream, she thanked him, and from that moment of crisis and gratitude, from that unexpected meeting in the Colorado wilderness, came a love story for the ages, a testament to courage, gratitude, and the transformative power of finding the right person at the right moment. Their descendants still gather at the mountain cabin every summer, bringing their children and grandchildren to experience the wilderness that shaped their family's history. They hike the same trails Atticus and Luna walked, swim in the same mountain streams, watch the same spectacular sunsets. And they tell the story, making sure each new generation knows where they came from, understands the values and principles that guided their ancestors, appreciates the courage it took for Luna to leave Missouri and for Atticus to open his heart again after years of self-imposed isolation. The story has grown somewhat in the telling, as all good stories do. Some versions have the boar larger, more ferocious, closer to Luna when Atticus shot it. Some versions emphasize Luna's composure, her immediate recognition that this mountain man was someone special. Some versions focus on Atticus's skill with a rifle, his protective instincts, the way he immediately took responsibility for Luna's safety. But the essential elements remain constant. The charging boar, the perfectly timed shot, the woman who did not scream but thanked him instead, and the love story that grew from that dramatic first meeting. It is a story that speaks to something fundamental about the human experience, about the way our lives can change in an instant, about the importance of courage and gratitude, about the possibility of finding love and connection even when we think we have given up on such things. It is a story that reminds us that happy endings are possible, that the challenges we face can lead to better things if we meet them with strength and grace, that sometimes the best partnerships are between people who seem very different but share the same core values. Atticus and Luna would probably be embarrassed by how much their story has been romanticized, how they have become almost mythical figures in family lore. They were just people, after all, with flaws and fears and moments of doubt like everyone else. But they were also extraordinary in their ordinariness, in their determination to live authentically and love fully, in their willingness to work at their marriage and their family with the same dedication they brought to their professional lives. And ultimately, that is what makes their story so powerful and enduring. It is not a fairy tale about perfect people living perfect lives. It is a real story about real people who found each other, fell in love, built a life together, raised a family, faced challenges, celebrated joys, and created a legacy that extended far beyond themselves. It is a story that could happen to anyone, that starts with a single moment of crisis and courage and grows into something beautiful and lasting. The wild boar charged through the pine undergrowth with murder in its black eyes. 300 pounds of tusked fury heading straight for the woman who had knelt beside the mountain stream. The mountain man raised his rifle and fired, and the boar dropped 3 steps from her feet. She did not scream, she thanked him. And from that moment grew a love that lasted a lifetime and echoed through generations, a reminder that the best things in life often come when we least expect them, that courage and gratitude are powerful forces, and that love, real love, is built not on grand gestures but on steady devotion, mutual respect, and the daily choice to honor and cherish the person who shares your life.